Some of you might wonder why I even bother with a modern mirrorless camera body, especially from Sony, which are known and bought for their amazing autofocus performance, when I am mostly shooting with manual focus lenses. Well, that's something I want to get into today, and to make it a little bit more interesting, I'll put some footage of my recent street photography outing over the talking head. Quick disclaimer before we start. This is only an opinion, my opinion, and it's not something I consider the proper or only way to shoot. It's just what my approach of photography has developed into after 7 years and what works best for me right now. So with that out of the way, let's get into my 3 reasons to use manual focus lenses. Number 1 is aesthetics and haptics. I just really enjoy the visual look of manual focus lenses. Maybe it's partially nostalgia from a time when my parents used cameras with these types of lenses. I really don't know. But what I know is I like the numbers, the focus scale, and the colorful accents. And in my opinion, they just age way better than their modern counterparts, let's say. Having a nicely dampened focus ring and an aperture ring with heavy clicks are some of the most satisfying parts of using a camera with a lens like this. These kinds of manual focusing lenses with a full metal build are just a joy to hold in hand, and it inspires me to pick up my camera a lot more than my autofocus, more plasticky counterparts do. Number 2, character. So not only do I enjoy the character of the outside appearance of a lens, I also enjoy the visual character they can give your images. Be that either by softening the scene using a large aperture, the rendering of colors in a certain way. I really enjoy lenses with lots of micro contrast. Or having flares or veils created by not so sophisticated coating on the lenses. I just really enjoy having these creative options, even though I don't use them in every single one of my images, of course. Number 3 is comparable size. So due to the fact that you are physically focusing the lens yourself, there's obviously no need for an electronic focusing motor to move the lens elements. And that allows for a more compact construction in comparison. That's also one of the reasons I really enjoy using this 50mm f1.2 lens from Voigtländer, which, by the way, if you're interested, I am going to do a review of in my next video. So if you would like to see that, please subscribe to the channel so you'll be notified when that video comes out. Now, all this is well and good, but aren't manual focus lenses restrictive and slow? And the answer is, it depends. Yes, manual focusing is slower in most cases in comparison to pretty much any lens and camera body combination released in the last couple of years. So if you want to shoot any type of quick moving action, or if you are filming a lot of vlog style content like I'm doing here right now, where you are in front of the camera yourself, I would not advise using manual focus lenses. But of course, that doesn't mean it's impossible, and please feel free to experiment and just do your own thing. For my type of work and style of shooting, manual focusing is perfectly fine. So let's talk about my experience using manual focus lenses in a travel and street photography scenario. For travel, So I've used this, again, 50mm Voigtländer 1.2 lens during my 8 months of travel last year, and I didn't feel restricted in any way, shape or form. So let me tell you how I used it. For walking around outside during the day, I had it set to f4, which gives me just that little bit of separation from fore and background and still emphasizes my subject while giving it enough context to tell the story of the whole scene. When I had a subject or scene in which I felt there's lots of detail that I want to capture, I would just stop the lens down further to f8. And when the occasion for portrait arose, or I wanted to take a picture of a very dark scene while still shooting handheld, I just open up the aperture as far as I could. So let's talk about how you actually focus reliably in practice with a manual focus lens. For focusing aids, I use the magnification feature in the camera, and that just punches into the EVF image or your LCD screen image to give you a more magnified view of the scene. And by doing that, you can then, for that specific magnified part of the image, can dial in critical focus. I know focus peaking exists, but I just can't get it to work for me. I find, for one, the color overlay is just way too distracting, even the white. And what I find even worse is the reliability of using that feature. So if you have a good strategy of getting good results with focus peaking, please put it in the comments below. I would be genuinely interested to hear how you do it, because I've just had so many results of images that I thought were in focus while using peaking, and I later in the day, when viewing the image on a larger screen, found out it's absolutely not. So yeah, let me know down in the comments below. So that's travel done. Let's talk about street. For street style scenarios, I will just set my lens to f8 and then use the zone focusing scale to gauge my focus. And for my specific lens that I use most of the times, which is this 50mm, I will have a focus zone which is around about 2.5 meters in front of me to almost infinity, which will be acceptably sharp. And that's perfectly fine for me and how I use this lens and take my pictures. This will be my default setting. So even when I stop my lens further down or open it up further and change the focus, before I even arrive at the next scene, or before I even know what to shoot next, I will set my lens back to f8 and to that infinity setting. At this point, I've done it so many times, setting the lens back to my defaults, that it's become essentially muscle memory. So let's talk shutter speeds. For street, I prefer to have my minimum shutter speed set to 1/250th of a second. But of course, I have no issues going even quicker than that, up to a 500th or a 1,000th of a second to further freeze motion if the light allows it. So with those settings dialed in, I will let the camera work out the ISO by itself, and I have no issue when the camera uses ISOs as high as 6,400 or even 8,000. That's still something I find produces more than workable images. So let's come to the conclusion of this video. Would I recommend using manual focus lenses in street or travel scenarios? Yes, absolutely. You don't have to use a modern and in comparison more expensive lens like I do. There's a whole array of vintage lenses that can be had for a fairly cheap price on the used market. Like for example the Canon FD 50mm f1.4. That's an amazing lens and can still be had for less than 100 euros on the used market here in Germany at least. And if you've used it a little bit and decide for whatever reason it's not for you, the prices are fairly stable, so you'll easily be able to resell it at little to no loss, or in some cases even make a small profit. I still use manual focus lenses a lot more than I use my autofocus lenses. They are just the ones I like seeing on my camera, and they just inspire me to pick up my camera and use it a lot more often than my autofocus lenses on the cameras do.